That's the prevailing view that's going on right now. And that's just sad for democracy, sad for the people.
And, Judge, it's really interesting because, I recall having a conversation with another judge, actually two other judges. And one of the things that they lifted up, and I hadn't considered this, and I'd love to hear your comment on it. One of the things they lifted up is that they said, if people aren't responding to something that the president is doing on the executive branch, they can use the military. They have all kinds of ways to enforce their decisions on the people. But when it comes to the court is dependent on its integrity and people's trust in the court to follow what the court tells it is the right thing to do, because the court doesn't have a military you can call in. And, am I wrong on this, Judge?
Absolutely, you're correct, Attorney Jones. And one of the problems with the Supreme Court is that they have not had an enforceable code of ethics.
Right.
The way the rest of the people have. Executive officials have, legislative officials, but the courts police themselves. And I know they've made some changes lately on ethics, but there's no real teeth in it to make these judges follow ethical guidelines and to recuse themselves in cases that they know they shouldn't be sitting on.
And it's just so disturbing. I mean, as a member of the bar, as a lawyer, it just hurts to see what this is doing to our judicial system. Public confidence, everybody. Public confidence in the Supreme Court in recent decades is at an all-time low. People are upset. They're upset about not only the bad rulings the court has made, but they can't believe all this self-dealing. All these, these people who are on the court, hanging out with billionaires who have cases and other issues before the court, who are taking their favors, their rides, their trips, all of this, all the, strange, selling of property, to undisclosed people who apparently also have, interests before the court, all these issues. I mean, it's just absolutely horrific, Judge. Judge Williams, when Chief Justice Roberts was appointed to the court, we were all super worried about his political ideology and his hatred of the Voting Rights Act and so many other things that he was known for at that time. And that's what we concentrated on. I don't think any of us thought he would be this misleader when it came to issues of ethics. How do you think, what in your opinion has led to this deterioration in the court's ethical conduct? Is it just the Chief Justice?
Well, Barbara, it's a good question, and it's not anything new. As you already said, reports of justices receiving luxury gifts and travel on super yachts and private jets and staying in exclusive resorts and all of that from their friends that have money. And we've also heard of the wives of justices doing things, and yet, again, the justices refuse to recuse themselves from sitting on these important cases that are really affected by the activity of their spouses or significant others. So where did it come from? It's not anything new. It's gotten worse. You've heard of book deals. We've heard of so much, surrounding the Supreme Court, and major ethical reform is required and necessary.
My.
And Judge, we have a bunch of listeners that are listening into this show. And, one of the things that struck me was when Justice Alito said that it was his, I guess we'll call it the spousal defense, right?
Oh, my God.
My wife is the one who flew the flag upside down. I didn't have anything to do with it. It was all her. I just happened to live there. Judge, can you share with us, what are the obligations of the judge? What are the ethical obligations in that type of situation for an outstanding jurist such as yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for asking. And one of the big issues and requirements for judges, and I had to follow with years, is that we must not sit on cases where there's even the appearance of impropriety. You're not going to be fair and independent and impartial. And when you see situations where the wives or significant others are involved in all types of activities that impact a case that you're about to sit on, you have an obligation on the rules of ethics to recuse yourself and not sit and step down. And we're not seeing that today. And as I said, the impression is that so many judges are no longer impartial, but they're ruling not independently, but they're ruling based on their views and their friends who have philosophy. That's the problem.
And, and Reverend Chauncey Brown, you are not only a young leader, you're a leader of a church where you talk to people constantly about morality, honesty, dealing fairly with each other in this society, being worshipful, having, a spiritual base. But what do you think? How did you react when you heard about this controversy and this excuse, this alleged excuse, which has left a lot of us incredulous? What did you think about this?
Well, to agree with what has already been said, the lack of impartiality is stunning, yet not shocking any longer, because the moral code and moral fiber of America is just fading away, being uprooted day by day. As a pastor, as a civil rights activist, as a husband, I'm 30 years old, and I've never put anything on my wife. I never used my spouse as a scapegoat because the Word of God tells us and questions us in 1 Timothy chapter 3, and it's speaking of church leadership, but I like to apply it in most places in my life. One that ruleth well in his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. When the Bible talks about that, I also look at that and say, well, if I don't have my home in subjection, okay, day one, the flag was up and we put it on our wife. But what about the other 6 to 7 days?
Right.
9 days, At what point do you say, take the flag down, put it up the right way? There's no impartiality. There's a scapegoat method of using his wife. And then when we look at the code of ethics or lack thereof, we have to ask the question, at what point, my wife all the time, she wanted to marry me. She necessarily was not wanting to be a first lady, but once I became a pastor, that was her role. There was a moral code and there was a presentation that she has because she's married to a pastor. And what we're seeing more and more in this country is that the Supreme Court, their spouses can be scapegoats, but they don't have to have a code of ethics. They don't have to follow any appearance of impartiality. But instead, when things get hot, we can just throw it on our wife. And sadly, those that agree with us politically will say, yeah, that was his wife. But if your wife can control the flag at your house, you can't tell me that bedroom politics won't control your decisions on the court.
Oh, but Daryl, now I'm mad, y'all. Now you guys know I'm not happy that he was able to throw his wife under the bus publicly and said that she was, quote, emotionally upset, playing that whole stereotype of the crazy woman, angry, doing crazy stuff. But isn't there kind of like a worm in this story, Daryl? Because she allegedly was mad because the sign was anti-Trump, had a curse word in it, and she was allegedly so upset because it was close to, quote, a school bus pickup site. But it turned out that none of that's true, that the schools were not even in session, that were not, were meeting online because of COVID at that time, and that there were no bus pickups at that location. I mean, Daryl, come on, what are we dealing with here?
No, I think that you're absolutely right, Barbara, that, we have to really take a holistic view of this picture to understand what it is that this justice is dealing with. And, Judge Williams, I've got to ask you, they're trying to decide now whether to do any type of investigation. I think that Reverend Chauncey really hit it on the head, right? Day one, Justice Alito may not have known about the flag being flown upside down. Day 2 through 6, he knew, and he understood what it was all about. If there is an investigation and it's then shown to show that he is being less than candid with regards to what he knew, when he knew it, and his actions, what's the appropriate step to be taken next?
Well, that's a good question, and I would think after an investigation, if the facts point out that he knew, then the minor thing would be, of course, to recuse him and disqualify him from sitting on any cases that deal with, President Trump and those election issues. That's the minimum. But more than that, and I'm going to get back to what Pastor Brown has said, that there's, despite the code of ethics or lack thereof, there's a moral principle here. And morality would suggest that you just can't sit in cases where, your interest could be influenced in your decision making. And it seems to me that some judges across the years would have just resigned. Or not just recuse themselves, but resign. That's a terrible offense to do that. So if the facts suggest that the justice was very aware of what he was doing, how can you sit in judgment? How can the citizens pay any attention to your decisions in the years to come?
And can we talk about one other thing about this, everybody? When I bought an American flag, because I fly them, outside my home, especially during the 4th of July. There'll be one up for Memorial Day. I put my flag up all the time outside my home. And when I bought my flag, there were instructions that said, you should never fly this flag, X way, that you should always be respectful of it. You should never, fly it, hold it, and never, display it in different ways. And you certainly should never have it upside down unless there was a distress, emergency. So we know that. I mean, this is not like it's not commonly known that you don't fly a flag wrong. We're not by the way, everybody, we're not talking about some little old flag. Look at the picture. It was a huge American flag, big old rascal. So that's why we know he saw it. So the question, it begs the question, how in the world did he allow this to happen? What do we do about the fact that we have two justices, associate justices on the Supreme Court who have had some partisan dealings about this insurrection? I am so upset.
Mm-hmm. And they have the ability to decide for themselves, Judge Williams. This is the part that gets me, Judge. I agree with everything, obviously, that Barbara has laid out. With the Supreme Court, they're the ones who decide. They're their own little fiefdom, each individual one. They get to decide whether or not they're going to recuse themselves. There's nothing that says you're messed up because of your mix-up and all this stuff you're involved in. There's no way you can sit and listen to this case. Who gets to make that decision? The justices themselves. Come on, Judge Williams.
You're absolutely right. And one day, hopefully, the House and the Senate